controlled teammates, whatever you find, or open world or whatever. But what we can do, we're going to do it to the best. And we're going to push it a little bit further than everybody else has pushed it so far. But we're only going to do that. So for us, it was that. It was only doing, the boss fight to the maximum of our capacity and doing nothing else around. So every time we pitched the game, we were like, okay, so it's just boss fight. And they were like, yeah, okay, but there's going to be like, weapon choices and character evolution. And there's going to be minions in between the fight that you can grind on and level up. And we're like, no, it's just going to be boss fight. One boss fight, one boss fight. And people were like, no, but then maybe you can do this or that, or it's going to be boring, or you can't sustain the rhythm and the pacing. And we're like, no, we're going to do it. And we did it. And the pacing of the game, I think, is something that makes it very unique, but something also we were very criticized. Those moments of just walking and going to the next boss was one of the criticism done to Fury. They was like, that's a bit boring. There's nothing happening. There's no minions to grind. But that was the idea. That was the idea that you would just do boss fights. So we tried to turn those moments of calm between the fights to make them useful to build the excitement of the next fight, because we put all our money in the next fight.
Yeah, no, and that's perfect that you just said that, because I think this is a great leadway into our next discussion topic here, which I believe, Mustafa, it's the we kind of want to really now that we understand your relationships and stuff, we want to better understand the marketing of the game. So Mustafa, how do we want to approach that? Like, what do we have in store in terms of what type of stuff we want to know about the marketing and how
I think it's
fed into that?
It's funny that you mentioned the moments in between fights, because I actually did have a question surrounding that. I actually was quite a fan of the way that was handled, especially I think there's a very specific transition in the game, like between the second and third boss fights, like before you're in like the sort of open sky area fighting the older guy with the headphones, and he's like time master and all of that. So I feel like there was this sort of really nice juxtaposition between the fast-paced action of the fights and then these slower moments where the story got a chance to shine through really well. So I suppose my question there would be, as you were marketing the game, of course the boss fights make up the bulk of the mechanics, but how did you kind of strike the balance between really showcasing that the game does have a pretty strong narrative focus between those fights, while also making sure that people are aware like this is going to be a fairly fast-paced experience?
But to be completely honest, we thought Fury was we had a great idea with the narrative of Fury, and we were very proud of ourselves and very happy with ourselves. But we never thought it would be as loved as it's been. We thought people would love the game mostly for the game design and the experience and the music and the art, but they would maybe go, yeah, okay, story about freedom, fine. Yeah, and eventually we were quite surprised with the reception the story got, and how actually people related to it and how they found it super meaningful. So we were very, it wasn't expected that the story would get so much praise and make people think about it like that. So it wasn't one of what I call our silver bullets, our communication silver bullets, our marketing silver bullets. And the thing I want to say about this idea of how do we market a game that's unique is it really comes from the design. It all goes together. I don't think you can have actually think the same person who designed the game can think about the marketing. It's really the same brain, and it's when you design the game that you market it at the same time, because you have to push the edges that are going to make it stand out from the crowd and that are going to make the experience unique. So it really all goes together. So when you have a pitch as clear as Fury, your marketing is super easy to write. You're going to sell the experience, you're going to sell the amazing art because you have Takashi Okazaki and our art team on it, that with the visuals that you've seen. You're going to sell the intensity of the experience, you're going to sell the music, you're going to sell the absolute uncompromising skill-based gameplay. And then we started with that, and then we had the people play the game, and then we realized we also had potentially a game that would be great, much more challenging than we thought it was. We didn't want to make Fury very hard, and we still don't think Fury is very hard, actually. We think Fury is much easier than the Soul games. And then we realized that people found it challenging and hard, and we were like, okay, here we have another silver bullet for our game. We could make, a speed running mode, and we could try to push that, because people who love the skill-based game, they will want to improve their skill, they will want to beat their own records, and then it makes sense to have a speed run in that kind of game. So this is why we added it. So basically, all the bullets came from the design and from the idea that we had of the game and the experience we wanted to provide. And this is how my marketing plan was done. It was very easy.
Right. Okay. Yeah. So it's interesting, and I think we can kind of, for listeners, kind of looking at the topic itself, it's almost as though the kind of the things that make the game different are more, they kind of make up the marketing almost on their own, like the ability to kind of explain and offer something and deliver on something that's different from what someone might see on kind of a day-to-day. And then even some things that maybe you didn't expect, like the difficulty as kind of a nice edge, and things like that.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Great. Okay. Yeah. So I mean, and this will kind of also transition into just some of the methods and strategy as you got maybe closer to when the game was coming out and things like that. So when you in July of 2016, the game was released as a PlayStation Plus game for the subscribers for that online service. How did that partnership kind of come about? It sounds like you said that had something to do with your original pitch, but what kind of allowed that to take shape?
So we are a fiercely independent team. We've been working on the publisher side, and we've seen what publishers or too many layers of control can do to a great idea sometimes, even though sometimes it can also be great, of course. But so we want to be independent. So we arrive after 5 games done on mobile with pretty limited budgets that we managed to do everything ourselves. But here we're talking about a much bigger game. We're talking about a game that ended up costing around almost 2 million euros, right? So we are like, okay, how are we going to close this budget? We don't have that money, even though at the time it wasn't that expensive, because there wasn't the Switch version, the Xbox One version, the DLC, and da-da-da-da-da. It was already above €1 million when we started working on it. So we were like, we don't have €1 million. How are we going to do it? And we don't want to sell to a publisher, because we want to be independent and we want to do everything ourselves. So we looked around us, and then there was at that time, Sony was really the place to go when you were an indie dev. They were really being a great partner and really pushing so many indie devs at that time in 2016, 2015. It's the time of No Man's Sky and all of those games, Inside and all of that. Anyway, so we talked to them, and they had this. We wanted to get some kind of funding from them without giving them the publishing of the title, and they had this deal that we could do with them, that if we were free for a month, they could give us a significant part of our budget that would help us close our round. So we were like, okay, but then we won't sell anything on PlayStation. That's terrible. But on the other hand, we're going to get all the visibility that we can get from a marketing push from PlayStation, which, of course, is gigantic for an indie, especially an indie who just starts on PC, because before we were on mobile, right? So we decided to do it, and we never regretted it, because for sure we never sold anything on PlayStation. There were 3 million free downloads of Fury. But we benefited from all the visibility that Sony could give to its program, and it led to a lot of sales on the other consoles too. And we kept our independence. So all the money we made on Switch or on PC was all for us also. So it was worth it.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's really interesting to make note of too, because sometimes when it comes down to getting visibility, people don't necessarily think about the potential of putting the actual game out there. And let's say it could be in the form of a demo. In your case, it was a form of PlayStation Plus and having the game available for free. But and obviously PlayStation, as you said, carries a lot of extra weight and visibility with that. But there's definitely something to be said there that getting the additional visibility, even though it might not relate into direct sales at that moment in time, clearly was a good, a very strong benefit for you guys, and carried over into obviously other channels and opportunities for you as well, correct?
Yeah, it gave us a lot of visibility. We were on Sony's booth at E3. We were in the newsletter. We were on the PlayStation Plus storefront on the top of the front. On the front of the store. So yeah, that gave us a visibility we wouldn't have had at the time. And I mean, if it wasn't for the freedom we gained, we wouldn't do it. I mean, you still lost all our sales on PlayStation. But considering it gave us the freedom to do the game we wanted, and Sony never interfered about our design or never said anything, and it just, that was great, yeah.
Yeah, that's awesome too, because, I mean, some people, they're okay with not having all that freedom, but for those who are, I think that's another important thing to call out on. It's like, well, we had all that freedom, so yes, we might not have gotten those, sale dollars associated with it, but at the same time, we maintained our freedom, and it allows, like you've been saying this whole time, it allows you to do so much more than you probably would have been able to do if you signed on with the publisher or something along those lines. So definitely good to make note of.
Well, there are some publishers that are very hands-off and are doing very great at their job too. So I don't want to generalize, but
yeah, definitely.
some publishers would have wanted us probably to put minions back in grinding and some stuff happening in between our boss fights.
Nice.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think, and this is good because I think we've been able to kind of go over a lot of the successes and a lot of the benefits to having, your core vision kind of planned out as you're starting to pitch and things like that. Now, kind of switching gears for a second, and I know you mentioned some of this with like the lack of like minions or other mechanics one might typically see within boss fights, but like what were some of the challenges that you had while marketing this, or what were some things that you maybe sought to overcome with kind of your initial pitches and your marketing and things like that?
Well, yeah, one difficulty we have with Fury is, as you know, it's there's lots of spoilers in it. I mean, not lots, but really big ones. And we also didn't have that many bosses in total. We had like 11 at launch, I think. So we were kind of stuck. We didn't want to spoil the game. We didn't want to show too much. That was one of the difficulty we have. And we have it actually with all our games. It's I think it's the thing about rather shortish experiences that are rely a lot on plots and narrative surprises for the players, and where we have very special design that we don't want to spoil by showing them too long before the game launches. So that was one of the challenges, was how to renew the interest and how to show interesting stuff without showing always the same boss. And then, for instance, the demo, we could only make people play the first boss because the other ones were too hard if you didn't do the first boss, so we kind of always had the same demo. So that's, for instance, that's some of the problems we have, and we also have the same problem with our next game. So for this, we kind of relied on everything we had else. So we talked about the music, we talked about Takashi Okazaki, we had a making of, we did a vinyl version, we did so as many things as we could to be able to talk about the game, the universe, and everything without actually showing too much of the game itself.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, definitely. So, trying to keep that experience as fresh as possible in the long term without giving away some of the big surprises. So, what were some of the strategies you used to kind of overcome that obstacle, or what did you find helpful in letting you maintain some of that mystery while still providing new information for players?
Like for instance, we did some of our communication focus was not directly on the game. One of them was on the soundtrack.